of African descent living in the U.S. and what I push for and what my friends and I push for is to say to the Americans, Nigeria and Africa, their interest and the interest of the Americans overlap. So in fact, we've been pushing them to say, don't think that what happens in Nigeria doesn't concern you. Don't think that Africa can be put on the back burner when you are paying so much attention to ISIS. So to the extent that there is a bias, yes, we have the bias. We constantly tell the American authorities that what happens in Nigeria concerns you, so you need to pay attention, but you need to play a fair role without bias, but it is important you have to pay attention. So if they are guilty of paying attention, and if they are guilty of seeing their interest there, then we are guilty too, because that is what we tell them. The U.S. interest in Nigeria goes from commercial and economic to security. If I might add quickly, you know, one of the first scares that President Obama had in terms of terrorism was that in December of 2009, when he had been in power for less than a year, there was what we are calling in the U.S. the underwear bomber, Abdul Matab. I'm mangling his name, forgive me. But of course, he was Nigerian born and was trained in Yemen. So our argument is that even if the U.S. is only worried about security, in this day and age, the terrorism threat can come from anywhere.
All right, Mr. Akwete, thank you very much indeed for speaking with us, and we'll get back to you in the course of the elections here.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, Mr. Nia Akwete, speaking to us from Washington. He's of the U.S. Africa Relations Consultant. Let me get to you. Speaking about security, Malaki, when he said that part where there was a lot of skepticism about security when these elections were postponed, do you think that anyone even remembers, wait a minute, I did say at that time that, okay, we were a bit skeptical, but now, is it justified after all?
Well, to the extent that the issue of security is paramount, I recall not even the concern of the ordinary people, even the governor, Shetima, came out openly to say that, look, we must first of all be sure that there will be life before you talk about the election. And that in the priority of man, you must first guarantee life before every other thing would follow. But I think that when that issue popped up, quite frankly, there were a lot of skeptics. Those who believed that perhaps that had been created just so to give an undue advantage to those who would benefit. But at the end of the day, it does seem as though there were merits in that suggestion. But the question, and which is deep at that, is at what cost? I mean, if the Nigerian state had the capacity, as we are now witnessing, to deal with that security situation for as long as they had the time to deal with it, why did we go through these harrowing experiences in which most homes, most women, most kids are now orphans, widows, and even widowers? To what extent could this country afford such avoidable waste? And even after that experience, have you had an effective way of integrating the people into this process, since it does appear that your priority is this election? I believe that quite a number of people down there, those who are in the eye of the storm, beyond those of us who are in the comforts of our home far away, would be dealing with different variables other than this election. I'm not saying that to discourage them, but I'm speaking to the reality of the situation, to say that, yes, it is gratifying to note that the Nigerian state, through the apparatus, the coercive apparatus of the state, is rising up to the occasion. But by far more than that is the despondency of the victims of this crisis.
Right. Let me bring in Mr. Ben Onyechere, who is still with us via phone. Well, Mr. Onyechere, the thing is, yes, we noted the incursions, the successes that the military has recorded in those 3 states that were troubled with insurgents. But, you know, you have many who still wonder, why did they wait this long? In fact, they thought at the time, some still do, that your party did that such that they can benefit from it.
My my take is that the opposition is in the habit of causing uproar in the polity. They stirred up the confusion of impossibility of defeat against the terrorists. Terrorism is not peculiar to Nigeria. Terrorism is an ongoing mischief right around. It's a global mischief, which is not peculiar to this country. The security situation now in the northern region of the country is far better than it was. And the president had kept his word that he will battle terrorism to a halt before the voting starts. And that is what he has done. And he deserves all accolades that he's receiving. I'm very happy that even the opposition, APC, has accepted that there is a difference between what he used to be and now. What? They have done that quietly, but I want them to come out in the open and admit that the president has done a lot of good to the future of our electoral process.
Well, what do you say to those who, maybe I don't know if you call them opposition again, but there are views out there who thought, why didn't we do this all along, that we could have done it all along, and then go ahead with elections smoothly, as it were?
I want you to be, I don't want to deceive you. It's not as if terrorism has been wiped out from the north or northern part of Nigeria. We are lucky that it has subsided. If you look at if you should take cognizance of the fact that terrorism in Yemen has been ongoing for quite a long time. Just yesterday, about 137 people were killed in a mosque. In Libya, it has been there, in Egypt, all around the world. So it's not as if Nigeria could have, or the president could have gone there in arms to stop terrorism at the onset. He had gathered momentum, he had gathered all the ammunition we needed, at least to keep them at bay till the elections are over. That's what we are doing. It's not as if we have stopped terrorism, or we could have stopped them years back, or 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or 2 years back. No. It has subsided, yes, we admit. And we thank God for that. But that is not to say that terrorism has been eliminated. I want you to take note of that.
All right, Mr. Onyechere.
It's an ongoing process, yes.
Okay, just hang on. Now, let's get our closing comments from all before we just go to the comments and read them today. Let me go to Mr. Afan. While he was speaking, he directly spoke to your party. Do you think your party did actually admit, albeit clandestinely, that, okay, well, yes, there's a difference from what was at that time and now, more so when your party, I think, also said, well, the ruling party, were the ones who instigated that rescheduling of the elections so that they can benefit. But now, many just think, including him, that after all, security was a real issue.
It is worrisome that the PDP seeks alibi for its failure on the opposition, what they call the opposition. When it comes to the insurgency, I mean, the APC has spoken about the insurgency. So have many Nigerians, including very prominent ones, like the former president, Obasanjo.
The APC said the victory is to Nigerians, but many also reminded me on Twitter at that time. They said, why is it that the APC says at this time now that the victory should be to Nigerians, whereas when they were failing, they blamed the president? So if they could blame him at that time, why can't they also, well, yes, okay, we thumb the president up at this time?
I hope that we realize that the president, if it is well studied or looked at, is the president of Nigeria. I hope that the PDP understands that the president is not the president of PDP. And so the activities of the federal government, when they are at least able to come to terms with the protection of the integrity of the territory of Nigeria, would be a thing that many Nigerians would salute. and that if Nigerians salute